Today's episode is brought to you by Freedom Project Academy. Looking for a K-12 classical online school built on Judeo-Christian values? FPA is enrolling now for the fall. Request your free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com.
It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Before we get started, as always, hit that share button so we can educate more patriots around the country. Kicking things off today with CultureCast and Vicki McKenna. Vicki, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Well, we've got two great stories, and I want to get right to them because I want to hear your full opinion of both of them. First of all, the U.S. Navy's LGBTQ-themed video touting correct pronouns, gender identity, is creating a huge problem in the country. People are mocking this, and people outside the country are asking the question, is America actually ready to fight the next war with this kind of garbage? Take a look at the video.
Hi, my name is Johnny and I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, and I am Kanchi and I use she, her pronouns.
And we're here to talk about pronouns.
What is a pronoun? A pronoun is how we identify ourselves apart from our name, and it's also how people refer to us in conversations.
Using the right pronouns is a really simple way to affirm someone's identity. It is a signal of acceptance and respect.
If it's a signal of acceptance and respect, how do we go about creating a safe space for everybody?
That's a good question. A really good way to do that is to use inclusive language. Instead of saying something like, hey guys, you can say, hey everyone, or hey team.
Yeah, and now that you say that, another way that we could show that we're allies and that we accept everybody is to maybe include our pronouns in our emails, or like we just did, introduce ourselves using our pronouns.
But what would I do if I misgender someone?
I think the first thing to recognize is that it's not the end of the world. You correct yourself and move on, or you accept the correction and move on. The most important thing I can tell you is do not put the burden of making you feel good about your mistake on the person that you just misgendered.
Oh, thank you for telling me that.
First of all, I got to comment on if this is the best production values, the
Right.
United States Armed Forces. It's like a 1970s of the version of the kids show Zoom, for God's sake.
Right.
I
When I think Duke, I actually think it was meant to reference a child's game show or a child show. So, but you're right. You've got two people who are, about as exciting to watch as is watching grass grow, talking about absurd things like instead of military readiness, about pronouns and not making people feel bad and being allies. And what the heck is with the guy's LGBTQWTF sweater that makes him look about as dangerous as, I don't know, Care Bear. But this is supposed to be a military video. And if you're our enemies, if you're China, if you're North Korea, if you're Russian, all of them have recently put out advertisements for their own military that are sweating masculinity. Do you look at the United States and say, oh yes, I'm really afraid that if we try to, let's say, take over Taiwan, China, that the United States is going to be in there to stop us cold? Not with these clowns, not with people who are more worried about being misgendered or misgendering someone. Imagine if the United States military ultimately becomes this and one of our troops gets, abducted, kidnapped, held hostage. Do you think that they're going to sit there and say, but my pronouns? This is so absurd. It turns everything about military readiness and the very concept of what a military is supposed to be on its head.
Yeah, this is lap dancing on all fours to military superiority. Explain to me, and this is war. We're talking about the military, whose primary function is to protect this country largely through warfare. And so the only thing they can come up with is allies. So here's a question for you, Vicki. What would the pronoun for the conquering Chinese be? Master? Overlord? What? That's the only thing they're concerned about.
Right. So maybe they better start practicing that, because they're going to be referring to their new masters and overlords by whatever the heck those people demand. So this idea that this even matters at all This isn't, the military isn't about you. There was another military recruitment video. I believe this one was for the Army, and it was a cartoon, like a Barbie cartoon of a young woman who decided that she wanted to join the military because the military could do favors for her. This isn't what serving in the United States military is supposed to be about. It ain't about you. It's about us. And we're really grateful when people join the military and protect this country and defend us. But again, it's about us, not about whether or not you feel comfortable wearing your LGBTQ WTF fuzzy sweater and feeling all warm and cozy about yourself.
This is a big problem, Vicki, despite the hysterical stupidity of this and the fact that many Americans are mocking it justly. Think about it. What's happened at the Department of Justice, what's happened at the FBI, the weaponization of these organizations against our own people. It's time to recognize the fact that our American military armed forces are in the hands of people who do not believe in military operations, who do not believe
and hate us.
Yeah, and they don't like us. We are the enemy to these people, not the Chinese, not the Soviets, not Russia. We are the problem. And they are literally turning our armed forces into adjuncts to some great big trans drag queen show in the future. That's about all they're prepared for.
It's worse than you've described the education students in the university system drawing, taking color crayons and magic markers and drawing themselves as superheroes. It's infantile. It makes the United States military look silly because it is silly. And if we are considered silly, we are not going to look upon ourselves as a lean, mean fighting force. This is about force. The military is about force, not about comfort, not about hugs, not about safe spaces, as she's referencing, and misgendering, which, by the way, is not a word. There is no such thing as misgendering. The only way you could misgender something is if you actually called something that was biologically male the opposite of what it was. And you don't need to apologize for that. It's just that something was missing that didn't give you a clue. But this idea that we misgender because some guy with a beard who wants to be called Alice can't demand that all of us use our appropriate pronouns. And look what they just did to those couple of kids in Kiel, Wisconsin. Put them under a Title IX investigation because some kid in a hallway overheard a conversation that she imagined meant that they meant to, quote, misgender a student. And so those two boys were put under Title IX investigations. This is nuts. And it's nuts on purpose. It's meant to be chaotic. It's meant to create misery. It's meant to create confusion. And it's meant to send a message that we are weak.
My favorite point was when she said, if you misgender somebody, apologize. But whatever you do, don't make the person feel bad for your guilt. I'd love to see these people on a battlefield. Can you imagine the protocols they would go through? Vicki, after the break, we have the other side of this coin to talk about with regards to out-of-control drag queen shows. I'll be right back.
With all the censorship taking place on social media platforms, we've made it easy to keep up with your favorite content. Simply download the Freedom Project Media app in your app store. Get access to 18 new videos a week, plus thousands of archived shows, lecture series, and educational animations. Download the Freedom Project Media app on your Apple TV, Roku, tablet, or phone, and make sure you allow for notifications to keep you informed.
All right, back with Vicki McKenna and CultureCast. Vicki, we talked about a effeminate, let's just say LGBTQ ready army, which means a not ready army at all. And now we have to go back to revisit the idea of drag queen shows and children. We have a pretty appalling video here to show you. Let's start with this.
Like a woman.
Yeah, so I guess you
Wow,
feel...
because most women walk around with fake boobs and bounce them all over the place and rub them in people's faces, feeling like a woman.
Yeah.
That was disgusting. And doing that in front of a child and having an adult have that child put a dollar bill in the garter of the freak show. If that's not grooming, what the hell is?
Yeah, this is really disturbing. If feminism was ever anything more than political, and we know that it was always really political, it was never really about helping women. Rush Limbaugh used to say all the time that feminism was merely a created organization to make unattractive women feel better about themselves. And you know what?
I agree with that.
That's looking.
I agree with that.
That's looking more and more accurate every week. If we actually had women who cared about women, this appropriation, polystyrene, whatever the hell you call that, rubber boobs bouncing in the wind. And I think there's something really telling that no one has mentioned before. I've not heard anybody mention it. Take a look at, while we're watching this close-up of what happened, watch this, and I'll make my point here. Go ahead. Notice what the dancer does.
Yes.
She covers her breast. So the drag queen recognizes on some level that what he's doing is utterly inappropriate. He covers his breasts, his fake breasts, because he at some level is ashamed of what he's doing. Staggering.
And yet does it anyway. And look at that woman with that small child, thinking it's fun, thinking it's funny, not realizing that, I don't know how, but not realizing that children can't process that kind of overt sexuality in a way that allows them to deal with it. I mean, there's a reason why we don't let kids access porn. There's a reason why children who sexed each other in high school get arrested for it. There's a reason why we have statutory prohibitions against sexual interaction with young people. There's a reason why there are age limits on everything from bars to guns to you name it. We protect children because certain things are age inappropriate. And that girl looks like she's about 3 or 4 years old and has some freak show, some weird member of the alphabet cult shaking fake nipples in her face. And it's not funny. That's not funny. It's sick and it's demonic. And it is utterly bereft of any kind of value system that suggests that we put children first.
Yeah.
Then again, a nation that murdered 60 million kids through abortion and celebrates that as some kind of great, hallmark of women's freedom certainly doesn't put children first.
One last time with that video, watch the faces of everybody around. That's another interesting tell. Look at once the boobs start bouncing, look at everyone is just like, look at the guy right over her shoulder there, applauding that little girl, giving to this messed up adult, this man who thinks he's entertaining people, giving this. Oh, can I just call it the hypocrisy? So there you have an African-American drag queen wearing a blonde wig. Isn't that some kind of sellout of Afrocentricity? Shouldn't he have a great big afro on? And number two, and this is the big one, Vicki, what do you think would happen if you had the parallel of this? You had a bunch of women dressed up as men, and they were waving oversized plastic phalluses in the faces of little children. Do you think this would be taken in the same spirit?
No, I think it would revile people even more. I think this reviles people. I think only people who are psychologically damaged or who think it's absolutely fine to sexualize children, in which case perverts, think that what that man did was all right. But yes, if women had done that, if women were walking around, in Speedo swimsuits with fake penises and then dropping trow and shaking them in front of people's faces and expecting dollar bills, that would revile people even more, even more harshly, which is probably why you're not going to see it. They use drag queens because drag queens are in the entertainment realm. They use drag queens because, Western culture is familiar with drag queens. But now we're supposed to look at that guy with a fake blonde wig and the fake boobs pretending to be a woman, and we are supposed to declare him to be an actual woman to the point where we set aside logic, we set aside biology, we set aside all science, all culture, all religion, all freedom, because that guy with the fake blonde wig and fake boobies he's shaking in people's faces somehow has the authority to declare that there's something wrong with me if I won't call him ma'am.
And we must repeat this one more time. There is nothing that a child can learn from that has anything to do with transgenderism.
And it's not harmless fun either.
and it has nothing to do with teaching them about homosexuality. It is purely the carnival aspect that they're presenting to the child.
It's fetishism.
It's
you are
fetishism.
indoctrinating children into fetishism. Way to go, alphabet
It's
cult.
a circus. It's a circus because kids don't understand what's happening. But all the bright colors and all the dancing and all the raucous music, it's a sexual circus for kids who can only be groomed on things like this. It's horrifying.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% on all items at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. Support this show by supporting a great American company.
(1944). That was the first year Gallup asked Americans the question about faith in God. Those were times when a majority of people trusted the God of the Bible. From 1953 to 1967, for example, 98% of U.S. adults believed in God. Fast forward now to 2022, when only 81% of Americans say they believe in God, according to a new Gallup poll. Now, the survey released Friday shows the steady decline over the years of American adults who believe in God. So why are more people losing faith, and is it possible to slow down the decline? I'm David Fiorazzo, and this is Christ and Culture. In a country like America, it may surprise us that polls consistently reveal a falling away. Of all nations, one with a blessed constitution, including religious freedom, you would think people would be very thankful to the God who once poured out his grace on this land. But sadly, we have regressed from a time when nearly all American adults believed in God to today when only 68% of young people between 18 and 29 believe. So let's break this down along political lines. According to the new poll, only 72% of Democrats believe in God and just 62% of liberals do. In contrast, 92% of Republicans and 94% of conservatives say they believe in God. So that's quite telling. And as we know, morality or immorality in public policy and legislation generally follow the worldview of the political party, right? Now, these results fall in line with recent polling a few years back, exposing another decline: church attendance. Gallup found only 47% of Americans now belong to church, a synagogue, or a mosque. Now, this is the lowest ever recorded in the poll since Gallup started in 1937. George Barna, he's the director of ASU's Cultural Research Center, he responded by saying a key observation is that the millennial generation in particular seems committed to living without God, without the Bible, and without Christian churches as foundations. Barna explains, quote, Gen X and the millennials have solidified dramatic changes in the nation's central beliefs and lifestyles. From a nationwide perspective, the Christian church has done shockingly little to push back. The result is a culture in which core institutions, including churches and basic ways of life, are continually being radically redefined. So, millennials are leading the way. What could go wrong, right? We're talking about those who grew up loving Obama's America, entertainment, socialism, and all things LGBTQ. Most of us have seen evidence of the recent and open war on truth. If you quote certain Bible verses now, it is hate speech. God is mocked. Christians are framed as the problem in society, right? And on and on and on. Young social justice activists have been discipled by the secular government education system, the Democrat media, big tech conglomerate, Hollywood, and they have influenced Christians to conform to the world. Many former professing Christians had no foundation, apparently, of biblical faith rooted in Scripture, but instead had fallen prey, perhaps, to your best life now theological psychobabble and the liberal apostate churches. The anti-Christian coexist philosophy has also been a popular slogan for decades and has duped people into moral relativistic thinking that would claim, as Oprah did on her TV show in the 90s, there can't possibly be just one way to God. She also went on to say, there are many paths to what you call God, Christians. Now, Jesus, the truth, and exclusivity are no longer options for this generation of godlessness, for a nation that, if they were once interested in God, might lean toward religious pluralism instead now. Let's dig just a bit further here. Polling last year by Arizona Christian University showed 35% of millennials believe in horoscopes, while only 19% of them believe God guides them. In addition, more millennials believe in astrology than in the one who created and sustains all things. They trust in the stars, but ignore the maker of those stars. Now, we could exhaust the findings and crunch more numbers, but we won't because it gets tedious. One, however, under-addressed cause of the moral decline in the U.S. and the exodus from churches is the fact many of today's church leaders do not even have a biblical worldview. Many pastors are not preaching the whole counsel of God. Now, I reported on this shocking research last month, revealing a mere 37% of today's pastors hold a true biblical worldview. Quote, the reason the new study from Barna is shocking to some and concerning to most is because it exposes great weakness and wokeness in the church. This is more than just a chink in the armor. It starts at the top and deals with leadership, Bible teachers, CEO pastors, youth leaders and entertainers, and potential worldview shapers. This research is disheartening, and yet it helps us understand why the American church has generally caved to culture, lost influence, and declined so rapidly. So students of the Bible understand this is all quite prophetic, right? And though it looks bleaker and darker today, God is in control, and things are rapidly falling into place, friends. Redeem the time. God bless you, and keep speaking the truth about things that matter.
It's time for Trending Left. We've compiled some of the craziest stories making waves across the internet. And we're going to start with one of the craziest statements I've heard in pretty much just the last 10 minutes. The fact that it's June means every bat-crazy Pride Parade fanatic has to share their innermost thoughts. So let's hear from one such human who claims kid-friendly Pride events should absolutely include kink, because it's all or nothing when it comes to exposing kids to fetishes. Here you go.
I'm saying that kids and kink can coexist at Pride in a totally fine way. There's a nuance here, that making an event kid-friendly doesn't mean sanitizing it, aka taking something like kink out of Pride. It's about making sure we're including and putting kid and youth voices and including them in Pride and particularly any justice spaces. Kids and youth voices are vital to justice movements because they are a vulnerable and marginalized group on their own, which includes their intersecting identities and oppressions. So I'm not saying that kink isn't appropriate for kids. I'm saying they can and should coexist with each other.
You see, she just gave it away there. She said that quiet part out loud, where basically she's wanting the youth to be the ones basically in charge of the kink and knowing all the kink because they're the ones who are going to learn the easiest with it. And so she also likes alliteration, and why wouldn't she want kink and pride parades to be coexisting? Anyway, we're going to head to the classroom, where a preschool teacher thought it was incredibly important to notify 4-year-old kids who already knew the teacher as a woman to clarify that the teacher was born a boy but now identifies as a girl. So just to be clear, the kids already treated the teacher like a girl, so coming out as transgender was for attention. Okay.
Today, on the last day, I finally decided to come out to my kids. And my kids are older, they're 4 and 5. And the way that I did it is just read them a book about this teddy bear that kind of comes out as a trans girl. And it's really nice and it's very simple. They understood it right away. And I think what made me cry the most was that afterwards, like, I kind of looked at them and there was just a silence in the room. And I just thought, like, oh my God, now they see me as a totally different person. And before this, they loved me. I was such, one of their favorite teachers. And it felt so good to have that. And I think that's one of the biggest fears I had, is that as soon as they found out about me, they would lose all love for me.
Number one, he needs some medical attention. He needs some help, because if you are trying to get the love and appraisal of an affirmation of what you do from 4 and 5-year-olds, then you need medical attention. And the fact that he claims that my kids are older, 4 and 5 years old. It says it all as to how much they want to indoctrinate the youngest of our children. But we're going to jump now all the way to 3rd grade. Maybe they are the older kids, where teachers are super excited to share all the special Pride books with 8-year-olds, including such legendary figures as Harvey Milk. Although I doubt they include the chapter on, how Harvey loved to rape teenage boys, but let's find out.
I'm going to show you some books in my 3rd grade classroom with LGBTQ representation, because representation matters. Pride, the story of Harvey Milk and the rainbow flag, is a true story of how the rainbow flag came to be a symbol of the LGBTQ community and what it means to that community today. Julian is a Mermaid and Pink is for Boys are 2 stories that challenge gender stereotypes and encourage boys to be who they want to be and to not conform to what society tells them that they have to.
Just no. I'd rather have the kids not read than read that. But that's not the only 3rd grade teacher putting her mark on a classroom indoctrination. We have another educator, and I very much so use that term lightly. Well, this teacher is excited to unveil all the free 99 LGBT books sent to her by an organization called Pride and Less Prejudice. Let's see what they did there with Jane Austen. Now, the group claims its mission is to help foster an inclusive environment by providing free Pride books for classrooms.
Pride and Less Prejudice just sent me some free books, and I'm freaking out. Hi, Rainbow. I love this. And then Sharice's Big Boys. These are my books. I'm so excited. So their mission is to create a more inclusive classroom. Oh, and a bookmark. Look at that.
No. Finally, let's wrap things up by moving from a colorful indoctrination to a black one, as one teacher celebrates Juneteenth by raising a fist in the air and leading her students in the Black Pledge of Allegiance. Never heard of it? Well, I didn't either, so here you go.
Fists up. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the Afro-American people. Under God, I will protect freedom, seek peace, honor our ancestors, and encourage and support the development and prosperity of people of African descent. You may be seated.
Yeah. As you can see, our public school classrooms are in great hands. And that wraps up this segment. More craziness next time.
And that's going to do it for this show. Hey, remember the 70s song In the Navy, the queered up version? Who'd have thought 30 years later we'd be right here? I'm Dr. Duke. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.